Hey there folks, we're back here at Patent Performance Racing, and we are in a shop right now, and you can see we don't have a race car. We got a cap for the truck, got it relatively cheap. Don't match the paint of the truck. If you watch the trailer modification videos, my other videos, you can see my truck is a white color with some pearl in it. Anyhow, we are going to be showing yourself some do-it-yourself paint and body work, the easy way. We're not spending a ton of money here, but we did spend a little bit of money. The paint for that truck is not cheap. So, but you could do all this stuff on your own with a rattle can. If you got a black truck, red, whatever, solid colored vehicle, most of the time you can find that stuff in a rattle can, and you can do exactly what we're doing here with the rattle can. Now, I'm not going to use a rattle can. I'm going to be using a actual paint gun and mixing my paint and stuff like that, because I have a tri-coat color, they call it. It's not just a base clear. So anyhow, you can see we got her all taped up real good. I did not pull the side windows out of it. I left the side windows in, and I just taped it. And if you find yourself, you're taping this stuff, and you're finding yourself having a hard time rolling in them edges there, we will come back in here with, we'll get to that in a minute. But if you have yourself a hard time rolling these edges over, it's real simple. You could take a plastic putty knife, or you could take your traditional Bondo spreader, and you can stick it inside there and walk it back and forth, and it'll roll that tape up inside there for you and tuck it in there, and it'll just, come out looking nicer, better. We don't want to see any red when we're done with this. We only want to see our white. So that's the idea here. And the only reason we're putting a primer down is for color match purposes. If we didn't put the primer down and we just sprayed white over top of this, the tint would look different than the truck. You'd probably see a little bit of the shadowing from the red kind of bleeding up through the white a little bit, and it would just make it a different color, just make it a different tint. It'd still be white, but it wouldn't be as white as the truck. So that's why we put the primer down. The primer is just to help with the color matching portion of this. So I want to show you a couple things here. I'm going to flip the camera, and I'm going to show you the cap itself, and I want to show you a couple little tips and tricks while you're doing your body work. So you see, I sanded some of it already. Now I'm using a palm sander to sand this. If you're going to use primer, use 150 grit sandpaper, and you can prime right over that. Now, this is what I wanted to show you. We got a little chip in the paint here. Now this is up on top. Nobody's really going to be getting up here and seeing this, but I figured this would be a good time to show you something. So this is a little chip here. Now if I just sand over top of this and keep going and leave the indentation of the chip in there, then you'll see it with the other, once I spray the other color down. Now this here was a chip as well, and this is what we call feathering in the auto body world. We sand on it till it feathers out. It's real nice and smooth. You can run your hand over it and you don't even feel it. When we spray our base on there, you won't see that. Now this chip here, if you run your finger over it, my finger actually gets caught on it and you can feel it. So with the finger being able to feel that, the way the paint will lay inside there, you'll actually kind of see the indentation in the color. And I'm not using a high fill primer. We're not painting a show car here, so it doesn't have to be perfect, pristine. We're not going to go put it in no Autorama or nothing like that. But we do want it to look appealing. We want it to be nice. We don't want to see too many imperfections. So yeah, you just feather that out. You don't get crazy with your sander. Now you could do this by hand. You don't get real crazy with it. You just feather it and you kind of work the paint back a little bit while you're sanding, and it'll look like that other spot. Now, like I said, I am using a palm sander, and this thing here is your traditional palm sander, and I don't have a soft interface on this one, it's hard. So the biggest thing is when you're using this palm sander is you want to keep it as flat to the surface as possible. Now I understand there's some contours here and there, like we get down here on the side of it, you see there's contour there. Now when you're sanding on that, if you're using a palm sander, or even a DA for that matter, you want to walk, you really want to walk with that contour, because if you're just kind of going straight up and down, if you're just going straight up and down with it, like so, you will see those grooves in there. You'll have flat spots, and you'll see those. We don't want those. You'll that when you spray that new color on there, especially once you get the clear on there, it really puts it in high definition basically, and it stands out. It looks wavy. We don't want none of that. So when you're doing a contoured area, you really kind of want to walk the sander. You want to make sure you're trying to follow that contour. Now typically if you're using a sanding block, you know, and you were doing this, you really want to sand on a 45-degree angle. That's how you get it the flattest. That's what ends up with the best ending results, having that 45. You want to do the same thing with your palm sander. You know, you want to kind of have that 45-degree. You're not just straight pulling it back and forth or straight going side to side. We're literally doing a 45-degree angle with it, and it just looks smoother, it lays smoother, the paint looks better, and this is what I've learned over the years with trial and error and stuff like that. So anyhow, this is where we're at. We're going to go ahead, we're going to get finished sanding this thing, and then we'll be breaking out the paint gun, we'll be cleaning it and getting it ready to shoot down some base. Now the other thing I do want to say is when you're painting, you really want to have it as warm as you possibly can get it. 60 degrees and above is the ideal temperatures for painting. You have flash periods. Most of your paints have a 15-minute to 20-minute flash period, and that's just the solvents and whatever coming up out of the paint, and it's starting to dry and harden, and now you can put your other coat on there. Or if you're on your last coat of primer and you're going to switch to base, you could still spray over that tacky primer, but you have to let it flash so the chemicals can get, they just come up out of it. I'm not really scientific, but anyhow, so yeah, that's where we're at. We're going to go ahead and finish sanding this thing. Oh, the other thing I wanted to say, make sure you're wearing the proper mask, okay? You definitely, when you're spraying the paint, you definitely want a chemical mask, a mask that is for filtering fumes, okay? The chemical fumes that come off of the paint. You definitely want the proper mask for that. And you want to wear a decent dust mask when you're sanding. I have now we're painting this obviously in the garage. I got some heaters going, but down here by the door, we have a fan. I know the door is closed right now, so I'm trying to get the garage warmed up. But I will crack the door, the fan will be turned on, and it'll take whatever dust is floating in the air and then blow it out. Now the other thing is if you're looking to paint something and you want it to be show quality, you really don't want to be painting on a dirty garage floor. Before I start spraying a color, I will blow the garage completely out, let the dust get sucked out of the garage. And if we were doing like a hot rod car or whatever that we wanted to take to an Autorama or something like that, if you don't have a paint booth, I'm sure most of you people watching this probably don't have paint booths. Of course, I don't really know. I don't know you. So you might have one. But if you don't have a paint booth, a quick little trick you can do is you can wet the garage. You can wet the floor. Whether you're painting it outside, on top of the concrete, and you built a little tiny like hooch, tent, whatever, you just use your garden hose, wet that down, and you walking around then won't kick up the dust, right? And You know, I've painted quite a few things out here, car hoods and doors and fenders and whatever, and I always end up with like a mosquito in the paint. You know, and I'm not bullshitting you. They are the hardest things to get back out of the paint. Once the clear is dry and you're wet sanding that thing and you're rubbing it, it's the hardest thing to do to get that frickin' mosquito out of there. And when that part hits the sunlight, you're like, I can see where that mosquito landed. But anyways, I will not be wet sanding and rubbing this. You're only really going to see the back of the cap and the side of the cap when it's on the truck. You're not going to be seeing the top. So what little orange peel we get, it don't matter. You know, they probably didn't wet sand and rub these things from the factory when they made them. So we won't be doing that. So we're going to want to try to lay the paint down as flat and as smooth as possible. So, but enough of that. We're going to go ahead, crack the garage door, turn our fan on, get our dust mask going, and start sanding this thing. The biggest things when you're prepping this is you want to make sure that everything that's going to get paint on it has got some sand scratches on it to give that paint something to bite into, something to adhere. That's just kind of what we're doing. We're going through and touching up the areas that the palm sander couldn't really get to, just so when we spray that color or that primer's got something it can bite into, and it'll stick, it'll stay. It won't flake off. Now, like I said, we're not painting something that's going to go to the Autorama, but we still want it to be appealing. You can use all kinds of stuff. This is a paint stick. You can use that as a sanding block. You know, if you don't have a palm sander, get yourself a nice little sanding block. And you could have sanded this whole thing by hand. You don't have to have a palm sander to do this. I happen to have one, so I used it. And I'll also say this. If you sand this thing, you really want to spray it within like 24 to 48 hours. The sand scratches will start to heal themselves and they won't be as deep, which in turn, the paint will end up chipping off. A little bit of wax and grease remover. We'll wipe this thing down, we'll let that dry, and then we'll tack cloth it. We'll get the gun out, clean the gun up, the paint gun, clean that up. wax and grease remover. Just in case you're wondering what we're doing now, we're just running a tack cloth to take whatever loose dirt or sanding dust may be left. We had used the paint gun, we had to clean the paint gun, and we filled it up full of wax and grease remover. And we used the paint gun to spray the wax and grease remover on the cap first before we took the tack cloth to it. And now we're just tack clothing it, getting ready to mix up some primer and put our first coat down. Probably gonna need ourselves a step stool, so we'll get that over here. Put it in the center. Maybe we can go all the way across at once, I don't know. Now I'm not real sure, but wherever you guys get your paint at, if you're going to use a paint gun, they'll typically give you a printout of how to mix it. So with the primer, you have your primer itself, and then we got a hardener, and then we're going to have a reducer. And this paint right here is a 4:1:1 mix ratio. And while you're at your painting supply place, if you're going to use a paint gun, it's real helpful if you just get these measuring cups while you're there, so you're not trying to figure out any math. It's got scales and graphs right on the side of it. It's straightforward at that point. Another good thing is if you're at your painting supply place, ask them to print you off the material product information. That way you know what your flash times are going to be. You know what type of air pressures to set your gun at, what kind of tips to use. And that's about it. It'll tell you how many coats they recommend you to put on there. You just guess at that. You just look at it. If it looks good, move on. It says this particular paint has a pot life of 1 hour if we mix it 4:1:1. So we're going to go ahead and mix up enough that hopefully we can get a couple coats out of it. Now what we are going to do, and I'm not going to be able to capture that on camera, but what we are going to do is I got a piece of plywood inside here. I'm going to take this after I put it in the gun over to plywood. I'm going to test spray it, make sure I like the fan pattern. If the fan pattern is good, we'll move right to the cap and you'll see that.
you can kind of see the different shade in the paint, how it's real shiny there yet, and it's dulling out over in there. That's how we know it's flashing off. Sorry if it's muffled. I got my breathing mask on because, well, there is still a lot of paint fumes in here, and we really don't want to breathe in them fumes at all. I got the fan and stuff going. I might take the fan up one notch, but there's still fumes in the air, so I'm going to be keeping this mask on the whole time I'm out here. I just mixed up some more primer because that first batch I mixed up, I only got one coat out of. So hopefully this coat gets all the areas we need, and then we will clean the gun and move to a base coat.
So as we can see, the cap has now been primed. It's still flashing off a little bit on the top. It's been about an hour and a half since I finished. You can kind of see those marks that I was talking about feathering. You can't see them anymore. Can't see those at all, so it blended nice. It was feathered good. Now, never said that I was a phenomenal painter or nothing. So I got a little bit of a run sag going on over there. I wouldn't really call that a run, I'd call that a sag. We're gonna go ahead and touch that with some sandpaper real quick, get rid of that sag, so that's gone. But I'll show you kind of what I was talking about. If you're using a palm sander or a DA, you gotta really be free floating. And if you're not really doing body work, you're just scuffing the paint, having a soft interface pad really does help for this. But I'll flip the camera around and show you what I was talking about. So that area, that corner there, is kind of what I was talking about, being soft with the palm sander. I really should have sanded that by hand. I could have contoured it better by hand. And then they got soft blocks for doing those edges. See, can you see? Yeah, you can see my sag right there. So that's why I was saying you gotta be soft, you gotta be gentle with that thing. Otherwise, you really can't change the shape, even if it's metal. And you got Bondo, you know, you put a little bit of Bondo here and there and whatever else to help make it straight and smooth and whatnot. You can really change the shape of it digging in with that thing if you're not careful. That has a sharp corner. Like I said, I should have used a soft block, or I should have just done it by hand, and it would be contoured better. You wouldn't see that sharp kind of like cut edge to it. Or if you had a soft interface pad on your palm sander or DA, that would have helped eliminate that as well. But I haven't painted in a while, so we're just kicking the dust off right now. Anyways, we are going to go ahead. I'm going to sand that sag down a little bit. I'm not going to get crazy aggressive with it. It says that I got to wait an hour and a half to 3 hours to be able to sand or top coat. It's been just over an hour and a half. We're creeping up on 2 hours now. So, and I touched it. It's pretty firm. It's pretty firm down around there. So we're going to go ahead, and I got some 800 grit and a sanding block. And I'm gonna go ahead. I don't really want to take the primer off that much because I don't want to reshoot primer there, and I need the primer for color match purposes. So I really don't want to reshoot primer. So I'm gonna be real soft, real gentle, get rid of that sag the best we can, and we got the gun all apart being cleaned. It's just sitting in some solvent. So once I get that sanding ready, I'll get the gun back together and we'll go ahead. We'll shoot our base. And that's the same. It's got 5 to 10 minutes of flash time. So the ultimate goal is to have it done tonight in one day. If you let the primer sit on there for 24 hours or more, you have to re-scuff it. You can base over top of 400 grit paper, 4 to 500, whatever. But I don't want to re-scuff it because that's, it's a lot of work to go through and re-scuff it. So I want to get the color and the clear on it today. That way it's hardened and ready to go by tomorrow or the next day, and I can have it on a truck. Get it put back on the truck anyways. I gotta put the glass back in the back, but anyhow, get it on a truck and stuff. So that's the plan. I don't want to have to rescuff anything. I want to be able to just shoot and go. So we'll go ahead. We'll sand that sag down and go from there. 800 grit here in a sanding block. We are going to go ahead and sand the sag out of here a little bit. We're just going to be gentle. We don't want to take the primer off. So we're going to be real gentle. We're going to keep it straight. And we're going to do a 45-degree motion and see what we come up with. I want to make sure we keep the sanding block as straight and flat on the part or panel as possible. This way we don't cause ourselves to dig in. I'm going to grab a little chair to sit in because kneeling on the ground hurts. Go ahead and switch from the 800 and we're going to use some 600. I know I said, you can shoot your base over 400 or 500, but it's really when this sits over 24 hours and you have to re-sand it to put the scratches in it. The 600 will be just fine. You won't even know a difference. I'm really just trying to get the sag out of here is all I'm really trying to do. Now I'm not putting hardly any pressure on this sanding block. I'm literally letting the sandpaper do all the work for me. Now if we were painting a show car and we wanted some real good show car quality paint job, we would wet sand this primer. We would have probably put 2 to 3 more coats on it and we would have wet sanded it after it sat all night, and that would take all of the orange peel out of our base coat, clear coat. If you look at a car, any car that comes from the manufacturer, if you look at the paint job in the sunlight, you can kind of see that the texture of the paint looks a lot like the peel on an orange. And that's why they call it orange peel. That's kind of where that name came from, in case you didn't know. Now you can see we sanded that area where that sag was gone, and it's no longer there. You can see a little bit of a mark down there on the edge. That's not a big deal. You're not going to see that. That's not a huge deal. I mean, you'll kind of see the texture of it underneath the base. It'll kind of bleed through and show. But I'm not going to sweat it, and I'm not going to keep sanding on it and risk burning all the way through the primer. So we're going to go ahead and move on. We are going to put the gun back, finish cleaning it, wipe it all down, and get the gun back together and get some base coat mixed up and get ready to start spraying the rest of this. Alright folks, here we are. Just laid down the first coat of clear. We're letting it flash off before we do our next coat. I think I got enough clear to maybe do 3 coats of clear. We got a little bit shafted on the color, on the white itself, because he didn't give me enough paint. He also didn't give me enough of the hardener to put, because the same hardener works for both the color, the base coat, and then the pearl coat. So anyways, I had to kind of make it work with what I had. So I laid the second coat of the base down pretty heavy, and then I mixed up as much as I possibly could of the pearl, and I laid one thin and then one as heavy as I could, hoping that it's fully covered. I mean, I got some pretty nice LED lights hanging up here in the garage, and right now, looking at it in the lighting, I don't see any primer showing, which is, I hope it don't show in the sun. I hope that I was able to cover it enough. I would have really have liked to put down a third coat of the color and then at least 3 coats of the pearl to know for sure that it laid evenly and completely covered the primer. But I just used what we had. I just used what I had. It was, you know, the guy told me it'd be enough to paint the cap. Like I said, I don't paint every day. If I had to do it over again, I would have bought more paint, only because I got some touch-up work on the rockers and stuff that I'd like to do to the truck. And, well, now I don't have any paint, and that paint was expensive for them little tiny quart cans. Between the primer, the color, the pearl, and then the clear, plus the reducer and the hardeners, whatever, it ended up costing me like $400. So I'm not going to go back to spend that. The little rocker panel thing I want to patch, I'll just get some white spray paint from Home Depot and I'll rattle can that real quick. And you won't see it unless the door is open, because it's right there where the the person before me, the leg was rubbing. Anyhow, so the cap looks pretty good, I think. You know, it's coming along. We are painting in an old dirty garage. I mean, you can see the garage behind me. I do everything out here. I cut, I grind, I weld. I got cats that live out here. I had spiders dropping down into my paint. You know, my beard hair got into the paint and stuff. So it's not show quality. It's got a little bit of dirt here and there and whatever else. If I were to wet sand it and rub it, I could bring probably a good 70% of that dirt out of there and you'd never see it. But I'm not wet sanding and rubbing. So anyhow, we're just waiting for the clear to flash, and then we're going to be spraying our final coat. Or, well, I'm going to spray as much as I got. I mixed up the whole can. He actually gave me a pint of clear, but he only gave me a quart of the hardener, so I was only able to mix up 8 ounces, 16 ounces total. So anyhow, I'm going to spray all the clear. I'm just going to use it all up, whether I get 2 coats, 2.5 coats, whatever. What I'll do on the last coat is I'll do the parts of the cap you're going to see the most, like the back of the cap, the sides of the cap and stuff. I will finish the clear off in those areas before I go up to doing the top of the cap for, you know, polishing off the rest of the clear I got. Just so it's harder in those areas. It's got a better barrier for whatever. But anyhow, I'll flip the camera around and we will go ahead and let you guys take a look at what we've got going on so far. So like I said, I got cats out here. I got a calendar covering the food dish over there. Cat moved it to come get something to eat earlier. But you can see the floors, you know, from the primer spraying and whatever. It's a garage. I do all kinds of work out here, so it's not going to be the cleanest paint job, but it is definitely looking decent, you know, for what the camera's showing you. This is just a budget. See if I can get any of that. See, you can see that's dirt. That's dirt that fell out of the rafter from the damn cat. This is as budget friendly of a do-it-yourself paint job at home in your own garage. Like I say, you're not going to paint award-winning show cars in your garage, not without having a decent enough booth. But you can get good, clean paint jobs. Like I said before in a video, I could have wet the floor down. If I would have wet the floor down, no dust from my feet walking around, the air hose dragging on the floor, it would have been a clean paint job. If I had to put on a plastic ghillie suit and totally encapsulated, you know, like my hair and my clothes and whatever, all in plastic, man, there'd be very, very little to no dirt in that paint. So if you had a hot rod or something like that, you're a young man, old man, whichever, and you want to go ahead and paint your hot rod yourself in your own little 2-car garage, well, go for it, man. Have some fun. But keep in mind that if you drop some plastic down on the walls and you wet that floor down, and even if you tape the plastic to the floor before you wet it down, obviously, set you up a fan over by the garage door, crack the door so it pushes it out, so it kind of creates a downforce effect. Man, it'll do wonders for you, and you will get a decently clean paint job. And whatever little dirt you do get in there, or whatever bugs land on it, a good old wet sand and a rub job will get that stuff out of there. So as far as this cap goes, you can rattle can something like this. We put the primer down for color matching, so the red will never bleed through the white. You won't see it because it had that nice base primer on there. You can prime over 150 grit. You start with 150. Try to keep everything as smooth and flat as possible. Try to follow them contours as much as possible. Otherwise, you kind of get some sharp edging here and there. You can, if the primer sits for a day or two on there, that's fine. That's fine. Hit that primer with some 400 or 500 grit sandpaper. You hit that primer with some 400 grit sandpaper, and you just got to scuff it. You don't have to go to town. You don't have to take the primer back off of there. You really don't want to do that. So if you hit it with some 400 real quick without going through the primer, go ahead and you can shoot your base right on top of that. But if you start your base, you really want to get it cleared that same day, that same night. So that's something to keep in mind if you're going to be shooting that base. Make sure you're getting that clear on top of there that same night. So that's where we're at. I don't know, I lost train of thought. It's you know, I get up at about 4:30 in the morning every morning to go to work, so we're pushing a little after 10 now. Getting tired. Getting tired is what I'm getting at here. That's what I'm saying. I'm getting tired, you know. Anyhow, I think our 10 minutes is probably about up. We're going to go ahead and shoot another coat of clear, and then we'll let it flash for 10 minutes, and we'll shoot up the remaining amount. Inside the garage, 65 degrees inside this garage, with the door cracked open and a fan sucking the heat out. It's not too bad of weather to paint in. Alright, our 10 minutes is up. We're getting ready to spray the last bit of clear that we have. And we're going to start with the sides and do the sides first. And depending on how much we got left, so on and so forth, we will go ahead and start on the top. Well, there it is, folks. We sprayed the last bit of clear we had, so we're all out of clear. We ran out of that base. There it is, though. It don't look too shabby. I'm curious to see how it looks on the truck. So as soon as I can get some help over here, untape this thing, put the back glass back in it, and get somebody to help me lift it up onto my truck, we'll see how it matches the truck. And we'll go from there. We had a good night. We got quite a bit done. And we'll catch you next time out here at Patent Performance Racing. If you haven't done so, please like and subscribe. There'll be quite a few more of these do-it-yourself videos to come. We're always up to something. We always got a little project of some sorts going on. It's hard to record all of them, you know, but we do our best. We do what we can. Supposed to be getting the engine block back here either Friday or early of next week, so I hope I get that back I talked to him the other day. He told me Friday or Monday, so I told him I needed at least to block the crank, the pistons, the rods, so I can go ahead and get a short block assembled while he continues to fix my cylinder heads. So that's where we're at with that. That'll be the next video, and like I said, I hope it comes back next week. If not, stay in tune. Remember, like, subscribe, and share. Tell your friends, tell your buddies. We're out here doing it. Thank you for watching. Catch you next time.